Dear students, today I am going to start chapter number 3, two stories about flying. First story is First Flight. This story is written by Liam O'Flaherty. Is an account of a young bird that is afraid of flying for the first time. He believes that his wings would not support him for flying, despite his younger siblings, sister and brothers, flying fearlessly with much shorter wings. He could not gather the courage to do the same. He was punished to stay hungry if he did not try to fly. Thus, it was his mother that compelled him to fly by using food as a trap. The lesson reflects how one hesitates to take the first steps and that fear is all in the mind. One should trust one's abilities because the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself. So now students, the story is First Flight is about a seagull. So let's read. First Flight. The young seagull was alone on the ledge. His two brothers and his sister had already flown away the day before. He had been afraid to fly with them. Somehow, when he had taken a little run forward to the brink of the ledge and attempted to flap his wings, he became afraid. The great expanse of sea stretched down beneath, and it was such a long way down. Miles down, he felt certain that his wings would never support him. So he bent his head and ran away back to the little hole under the ledge, where he slept at night. So students, in this seagull, a bird that lives near the sea and has short legs, long wings, and white and grey feathers. Ledge means a narrow horizontal shelf projecting from a wall or here a cliff, and bring the extreme edge of land before a steep slope or a body or a water. And expanse means a wide continuous area of something. So in this story, the student's explanation is this. The story is about a young seagull who is at that stage of life where he has to learn to fly. कि छोटा बच्चा है, उसको learn करना है, क्या learn करना है, सीखना है, उड़ना. Unlike his younger brothers and sisters, he is too afraid to fly. When all of them went for flying for the first time near the edge of the sea, all of them except him succeeded. उसको छोड़ के सभी लोग उड़ जाते हैं, सभी बच्चे. He could not trust his wings. He got terrified, afraid by the vast sea, and got convinced that he could never fly. As a result, he was ashamed and disheartened, and thus went inside the ledge where usually he slept. Even when each of his brothers and his little sister, whose wings were far shorter than his own, ran to the brink, flapped their wings, and flew away. He failed to muster up courage to take that plunge which appeared to him so desperate. His father and mother had came around, calling to him shrilly, upbraiding him, threatening to let him starve on his ledge unless he flew away, but for the life of him he could not move. Now what flapped means? Flapped means move up and down when flying or preparing to fly. Muster and gather, plunge, jump or dive shrilly with a high-pitched and piercing voice or sound. Upbraiding means scold, डांटना, फटकारना, like that. So in this second paragraph, his mother, किसकी mother? His younger sibling, managed to take their first flight. मतलब जो उसके छोटे भाई बहन थे सभी लोग उड़ गए थे. फर्स्ट फ्लाइट डिस्पाइट देयर विंग्स बीइंग शॉर्टर देन हिज, उनके पर जो थे, पंख जो थे उससे भी छोटे, उसके पंखों से भी छोटे थे. बट ही कुड नॉट समन द करेज, but he could not gather the courage. Though he tried to desperately, he was scolded by his parents for not trying again. कि नहीं तुम, उसके मम्मी पापा उसको डांट भी रहे थे, वो ट्राई नहीं कर रहा था तो. But he was so afraid, he was so terrified that he could not even move. That was 24 hours ago. Since then, nobody had come near him. The day before, all day long, he had watched his parents flying about with his brothers and sister, perfecting them in the art of flight, teaching them how to skim the waves and how to dive for fish. He had, in fact, seen his older brother catch his first herring and devour it, standing on a rock while his parents circled around, raising a proud cackle. And all the morning, the whole family had walked about on the big plateau midway down the opposite cliff, taunting him with his cowardice. Herring means, students, a soft finned sea fish. एक छोटी सी फिश होती है. एंड डिवॉर मीन्स ईट क्विकली. कैकल लाफ इन लाउड और हार्श पे. एंड कवाडाइस लेक ऑफ रेब्रिजेस के अंदर जो कायर होता है उसको कवाडाइस बोलते हैं. नाउ इन दिस पैराग्राफ now he had been alone for a day after he tried because parents were busy focusing on his sibling. They helped his sibling master the art of flying and diving for food, कि किस तरीके से फूड को डाइव करके फूड को निकाला जाए, किस तरीके से उड़ा जाए, like that. His older sibling even caught his first fish which he proudly ate at a rock while his parents celebrating it. उसको क्या कर रहे हैं, उसको मोटिवेट कर रहे हैं. दैट मॉर्निंग हिज पेरेंट्स टॉन्टेड हिम ऑल द वे फॉर बीइंग ए कावर्ड. उसके मम्मी पापा जो हैं उसको टॉन्ट भी कर रहे हैं कि इसी तरीके से कायरों की तरह बैठे रहो तो मुड़ो मत, लाइक दैट. इसी तरीके से लाइक दैट द सन वॉज नाउ असेंडिंग द स्काई, ब्लेजिंग ऑन हिज लेड्स दैट फेस्ड द साउथ. ही फेल्ट द हीट बिकॉज ही हैड नॉट ईटन सिंस द प्रीवियस nightfall. He stepped slowly out to the brink of the ledge. Standing on one leg with the other leg hidden under his wing, he closed one eye, then the other. And pretending to be falling asleep, ऐसा दिखाता है कि जैसे वो सो रहा हो. Still, they took no notice of them. He saw his two brothers and his sister lying on the plateau dozing with their heads sunk into their necks. His father was preening the feathers on his white back. Only his mother was looked at him. कौन देख रहा है उसकी तरफ? Only उसकी मम्मी. She was standing on a little high hump on the plateau, her white breast thirst for what? Now and again she tore at a piece of a fish that lay at her feet and then scraped each side of her beak. And on the rock, the sight of the food maddened him. How he loved to tear food that way, scraping his beak now and again to wet it. So now student, ascending the sky means the act of rising up through the air. Preening means to tidy and clean its feather. Hump means a rounded raised mass of earth or land, and scrap means discard. Scrap means discard. So now in this paragraph क्या है? The sun had now risen, and he was feeling the heat more than ever because he was empty stomach. He was so hungry since the night before, क्योंकि उसने पिछली रात से कुछ भी नहीं खाया है. He stepped out of his legs and pretended to sleep on one leg and gained the attention of his family. क्या ऐसा दिखाना चाहता है, ऐसा प्रिटेंड करना चाहता है कि वो सो रहा है जैसे कि उसकी जो फैमिली है उसके ऊपर अटेंशन पे करे. His father was cleaning. His sibling जो है नोटिस करे उसकी फैमिली स्टिल नो वन नोटिस हिम, लेकिन कोई भी उसको नोटिस नहीं कर रहा है. His sibling was sleeping, his father was cleaning his feather with his beak, and his mother was standing on another plateau eating fish while she noticed him. The seagull got mad on seeing the fish because he was very, very hungry. He loved to tear away fish and scrape his beak now and then. So गा 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 he cried, begging her to bring him some food. अपनी मम्मी जब उसने देखा कि उसकी मदर कुछ फिश को खा रही है तो वो गा 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 करके अपनी मम्मी को बुला रहा है, कह रहा है और कुछ फूड मांग रहा है वो. Some food. Gaw called. She screamed back derisively, but he kept calling plaintively. And after a minute or so he uttered a joyful scream. His mother had picked up a piece of the fish and was flying across to him with it. He leaned out. He leaned out eagerly, tapping the rock with his feet, trying to get nearer to her as she saw across, but when she was just opposite to him, she had halted, her wings motionless. The piece of fish in her beak almost within reach of his beak. He waited a moment in surprise, wondering why she did not come nearer, and then, maddened by hunger, he dived at the fish. At this time, in this paragraph, there are so many hard words. So find out the meaning, like derisively. Derisively means in a manner expressing contempt or ridicule. Plaintively means said, uttered, make a sound with one's voice, and halted means stopped. In this paragraph, he cries in hunger. Who cries? The seagull, little seagull, cries in hunger to his mom, while his mother screamed back angrily, but he kept crying, which soon turned into a joyful scream at the sight of his mother flying towards him. क्या देखता है बच्चा कि उसकी मम्मी है वो उसकी तरफ उड़कर आ रही हैं with the piece of fish. उनके पास क्या है, एक फिश का टुकड़ा भी है. So he was very happy कि उसको फिश मिलेगी खाने के लिए. He got excited as she came nearer and thus leaned forward. Suddenly she stopped. क्या देखता है कि उसकी मम्मी जो है वो stop हो गई है. Not too far from him, out of excitement and hunger, he dived at the fish without realizing for a moment that he was afraid to fly. But फिर भी वो उड़ने से डर रहा है. With a loud scream, he fell outwards and downwards into space. Then a monstrous terror seized him and his heart stood still. He could hear nothing, but it only lasted a minute. The next moment, he felt his wings spread outwards. The wind rushed against his breast feathers, then under his stomach and against his wings. He could not feel the tips of his wings cutting through the air. He was not falling headlong now. He was soaring gradually downwards and outwards. He was no longer afraid. He was felt a bit dizzy. Then he flapped his wings once and he soared upward. Ga 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 ga. Gaw called ah. His mother swept past him, her wings making a loud noise. He answered her with another scream. Then his father flew over him screaming. He saw He saw his two brothers and his sister flying around him, curveting and banking and soaring and diving. In this paragraph, there are birds, monstrous, horrible, seized crab, headlong with the head foremost, soaring, flying or rising high in the sky, air, swept, move rapidly downwards through the air. Curveting means perform a series of jumps on the hind legs. Curveting, leaping like a horse. Banking, flying with one wing higher than the other. He got so excited that he fell as soon as he tired. For a moment he was in shock and stood still out of terror. All this lasted only for a moment and soon his feathers opened as he flied. क्या देखता है कि उसके पंख जो है वो खुल गए और वो उड़ने लगा है. He could feel the wind against his breast feathers, stomach and his wings. He could feel himself cutting through the air. He was not afraid anymore. अब वो डर नहीं रहा है. He was just a bit nervous, but कुछ nervous है. But then his mother accompanied. उसकी मम्मी उसके साथ आ जाती हैं. The whole family screamed out of excitement. सब पूरी family excitement के साथ आ जाती है, चिल्लाती है. Thus celebrating his victory over the fear. किस लिए चिल्लाती है? कि उसने अपनी जो डर है उसके ऊपर जीत हासिल कर ली है. Then he completely forgot that he had not always been able to fly and commanded himself to dive and soar and curve and shrieking shrilly. He was near the sea now, flying straight over it, facing straight out over the ocean. He saw a vast green sea beneath him, under him, with little ridges moving over it, and he turned his beak sideways and cawed amusedly. Shrieking means making a high-pitched peering cry and sound, shrilly, loudly and forcefully. Ridges means a long, narrow hilltop mountain ranges and a watershed, and cawed means utter a caw. In this paragraph, students, once he overcame his fear, जब वो अपने fear से ऊपर आ जाता है, देखता है कि वो उड़ रहा है, he forget that he was once afraid of it. भूल जाता है कि एक समय उसको उड़ने में कितना डर लग रहा था. ये वो भूल जाता है कि वो कितना डर रहा था. And he did all those things he once feared. और वो सब कुछ वो कर रहा है, अब करता है जिससे कि उसको पहले डर लग रहा था. He flied straight over the sea and could see the greenery and the mountains beneath him. He screamed out of joy as he enjoyed the victory. His parents and his brothers and sisters had landed on this green flooring ahead of him. They were beckoning to him. Calling shrilly, he dropped his legs to stand on the green sea. His legs sank into it. He screamed with fright, fear, afraid, and attempted to rise again, flapping his wings. But he was tired and weak with hunger, and he could not rise, exhausted. Exhausted by the strange exercise, his feet sank into the green sea, and then his belly touched it. Belly means his stomach, touched it, and he sank no farther. He was floating on it, and around him his family was screaming, praising him, and their beaks were offering him scraps of dogfish. He had made his first flight. In this paragraph, students, beckoning means होता है gesture. In this last paragraph, when he landed, who landed? Seagull. His family landed along with him. उसकी फैमिली भी उसके साथ लैंडेड होती है. As a gesture that they were proud. क्या फील करते हैं? सब लोग ऐसा दिखाते हैं कि वो प्राउड फील कर रहे हैं उसकी विक्ट्री पर. They were screaming and shouting in excitement. In their high-pitched voice, he then went into the sea, where at first he got scared and thus panicked. He tried escaping but got tired and weak because of hunger. Thus when he calmed down, he started floating in the sea he was once afraid of. His family was celebrating in excitement and offered him food as praise. Finally, he had overcome his fear and had made his first flight. So, student, we can see कि हम देख सकते हैं कि किस तरीके से एक छोटे से सीगल ने अपनी डर के ऊपर जीत हासिल कर लेता है. वो जब तक वो डरता है तब तक वो उड़ नहीं पाता है, लेकिन जैसे ही वो उसका डर दूर होता है वो उड़ जाता है और इस तरीके से वो अपनी पूरी फर्स्ट फ्लाइट करता है. सो इन दिस स्टोरी जो राइटर है अबाउट क्या लिखता है, एक अबाउट यंग सीगल हु इज अफ्रेड टू फ्लाई. ऑल हिज यंग सिबलिंग डिस्पाइट सब लोग उड़ जाते हैं कि अगर वो डरता रहता है तो वो नहीं कर पाता है, लेकिन जैसे ही उसका डर दूर होता है वो सब कुछ कर सकता है. सो नाउ स्टूडेंट्स, लिसन, वॉच दिस वीडियो, अंडरस्टैंड द चैप्टर.